Guys, we got a lot of really big news today. Now, we talked about this last week, but it's very significant, obviously, for the big dogs in college football, college baseball. What am I talking about? We talked about last week that scholarships in baseball are going to be brought up from 11.7 to midway through the 30s, as Greg Sankey said at SEC Media Days. Officially, it's going to be 34, but football is going from 85 scholarship limit to 105. So many things are changing here, with the school probably going to have to ante up more than they ever have in TV revenue share and potential more scholarships. Good on them. I mean, you are making $60+ million a year in TV revenue money. Can't be hoarding that like you used to. But let's talk about the on-field thing and what is going to happen here, in my opinion. In case you missed it, Ross Dellinger reporting that football is moving to 85 to 105. Let's start with football very quickly. Guys, there are so many 3-stars and so many under-recruited players in football, and especially in this state, that now that you move from a roster from 85 to 105, that guy that was on the borderline, that kid – that you didn't know if in this state could, you need to evaluate his senior year. You're on the cusp of offering, but maybe you don't want to. Guys, you can offer that kid now because you're not hard pressed to that 85 number. Guys, 105 is very significant. And I think that you're going to utilize and fill all of them. With 20 extra players, how many more? Well, 5 stars, because you have 4 of them that you have in this class right now. If you're in the high school ranks, how many more of those type of guys can you go and get? So, yeah, I do think that it's a very big deal. I also think it's a very big deal that that kid that's borderline, he's maybe going to Houston, he's maybe going to Tulane, but he's actually, you think that he's going to take 1, 2, 3 years to develop. You can take that kid now, develop him under what you have been doing, and you don't have to worry about cutting the kid or having to process the kid if it doesn't work out. You get to actually develop players. Now, I'm assuming that head coaches are like, man, I'm adding 20 more players to my roster. Excuse me. Well, majority of you go through the spring at least having 90 to 95 and then processing some of those guys out or kicking them off your team to get to that 85 scholarship limit. You're doing it anyway. To some extent, you're just cutting down to 85 when you got to hit the season and start the season. Guys, 20 is a lot. And I don't know what you're going to do with walk-ons. I don't know how many more you're going to be allotted. I didn't really check into that. Maybe some of those guys will get scholarships for being there as long as they have. But, man, when you can legitimately take all of the really good and just good players in your state, it changes things for LSU. You can see and watch a kid get developed over a 3 and 4 year span if they want to. That's the thing that I am most happy about for a school like LSU. Now, I understand that this state is filled with G5 mid-major programs, FCS programs. It's littered everywhere. And today is a bad day for them, because the guy that LSU was keeping their eyes on to see if that he would make a big push in their senior year, they don't have to worry about taking the kid if they want him. Now, I'm not saying that every kid is going to not want to go and get playing time at ULL and not want to come to LSU. That is going to happen. But if LSU starts recruiting the way that they're recruiting and they want to take a kid, the likelihood of them beating out ULL for a player is pretty high. Actually, it's very high in football. But it hurts them because you can take that player now. It also helps you with depth. And I think more than LSU potentially taking a dude from ULL, like, could you imagine Trey Harris and Kyron Lacey being recruited in those years that they came out and saying, hey, man, we could develop this kid. We have a spot for this kid. Well, Kyron Lacey went to ULL because of that reason, and when he got the opportunity to come to LSU, he did. That hurts your depth so much if you're a ULL or a Louisiana Tech or any FCS program. But if you're LSU and the team that we cover the most, because the depth that you're going to be able to add with 20 more players is ridiculous. Could you imagine 2 more running backs? Could you imagine 2 more wide receivers? Could you imagine 2 more offensive line? By the way, I'm just at 6 total players. Could you imagine 2 more dudes that you could have offered scholarships to along the defensive line, edge, linebacker, safety, corner? You get what I'm saying here. All the kids that you had to process at the end of last year, you didn't have to do. You could have let them stay here and develop and work with them. Now, other teams are going to have that advantage too. And I think more than ever, it is crucial. And I know that it hurts, it sucks for staffs who are having to recruit. But, man, if you're going to get to that 100, 105 scholarship limit and you're going to fund all of it, it puts more on your plate. But it's more crucial than ever to find that 3-star that's not going to go to ULL that can shine for you and come in and be really good. It's a big day for the Tigers in football, man. I don't know if you agree. I will check some of the comments right here to see. But I would think that a lot of you agree with that. It's interesting because I see Brian Turner's comment here, and he's talking about Xavion Thomas. Guys, you didn't take Xavion Thomas coming out of John Ehret. He goes to Mississippi State. That kid right there is what I'm talking about. A dude that goes to Mississippi State that normally, if you offered, is going to be at LSU. That is what I'm talking about. Could you have imagined Xavion Thomas, who had a punt and kick return for Mississippi State, if he's returning the punt against Florida State that Malik dropped? How much of a difference does that make? And we all know Malik Neighbors is one of the premier dudes ever at LSU. Still dropped a punt. I know that Florida State didn't score in 22. Doesn't matter. If you feel that you go down the score, changes the game when you turn the football over at any given moment. Great day for LSU. Horrible day if you're a mid-major. I feel like it's going to be the exact same, though, when you talk about baseball going from 11.7 scholarships to 34. I know that there's been, I think 64 Analytics came out with this and said that, 6,000 players will be cut because you could have had a roster limit of 35, actually. So let me break this down from baseball. In baseball, you could have 35 players on your roster. Now, not all of them are going to get scholarships, but you could have 35 on your roster. Well, now what the NCAA is doing is if that you want to fund it, you can do this. Now you can have 34 full ride scholarships that's going to cut a player that would normally be on the roster. 6,000 total baseball teams, you're cutting one kid from your class. Sucks. I get it. Whatever. We're here to talk about LSU. Can you imagine Jay Johnson with 34 full ride scholarships? And before Scott Welbert says a thing, he better fund every single one of them if Jay wants it, and he will. Let's not act like he won't. He will do that. He 1,000% will. Let me ask you a question. With gaining a full scholarship, which I'm sure that William Schmidt was always going to get, but a kid like William Schmidt getting now or potentially now having a full ride and with NIL enacted to it, how much is that weighing in on his decision to come here? Because, guys, let's call it what it is when it comes to a Major League Baseball draft. Money talks and bullshit walks. You cannot convince me that William Schmidt didn't have a very high number, and if he would have gotten that number, he would have gone, because there's a certain number that you just can't walk away from. What we do know, however, is that LSU is going to be competitive in the money that he's going to make here in NIL. It's undeniable of that truth. But how many kids are you going to start seeing like a William Schmidt come here? You know, every single year, Jay Johnson, every single year has been the coach that has gotten a player out of high school that was the highest rated kid out of high school not to go to the draft, and it's come to LSU. Cam Johnson, Chase Shores, and now it's William Schmidt. We know what Chase Shores was. Cam Johnson goes to Oklahoma, which they have a really good pitching staff over at Oklahoma. Clayton Kershaw's actual pitching coach is Skip Johnson, the head coach at Oklahoma. You get my point. Let me ask this question. That kid that is going to ULL, that kid that is going to Southeastern, Nichols, the Braden Joe Bears of the world, do they go there if LSU can provide them a full ride scholarship? Do they? And I think that is the point that I am trying to make here, is that it's going to hurt those mid-major programs. LSU is going to fund all 34. I don't give a shit what anybody tells you. Jay Johnson is going to get what he wants, and they're going to provide it for him. Because that man can go on a legit dynasty run. Like, I think Tony Vols in Tennessee is going to do it. Arkansas is going to do it. Florida is going to do it. SEC baseball just got tougher. Texas A&M is going to do it. It's going to make for some really, really bigly, really good college baseball. So as much as, you know, I think that football was a big deal in gaining 20 scholarships, I don't think it touches anywhere close to what baseball is going to do. Because of a kid like the starting shortstop at Ole Miss, or if a kid at Nichols, Jacob Myers, wants to come to LSU, you can provide them a full ride scholarship to come here, get them in the portal, easy peasy lemon squeezy. I just think it's a game changer, man. I don't think ULL is going to fund all 34. I highly doubt that they will. They may be competitive and do 20, 25, 30, maybe at max 25, 30. They ain't going to fund all 34. They ain't going to put the resources into it like that. At least I don't think that they will. Maybe I'm wrong. There were some other sports that gained some scholarship limits too. Not going to run through them. But look, just a massive addition for football and baseball.